Alright, today we start Android. Just so you know, when we start, I was able to take the lecture yesterday from the tip calculator for the iOS class. It is out there on the system. The video looks fine. The audio, if I'm sitting right here, it sounds really, really loud. And if I'm over there, it sounds really, really tinny. So if you put it kind of go in between there, it doesn't sound too bad. Alright. I'm also going to have to, I told John this before, and if one of you, or several of you can help remind me of this starting tomorrow, I should only probably go a half an hour, then stop, save it, and then start up again. Because yesterday, when I do these things and I create the MP4s, typically an MP4 file, when I create it in Camtasia on a Windows machine, the biggest one I've had has been 130 meg. And that's been over an hour long. The one yesterday I did on the Mac was 52 minutes long, and it was 989 meg. So it took like 45 minutes to upload it to YouTube this morning. But it did upload. Seems to be okay. All right. All right. There is a folder out there, as always, with today's date on it. So I just very quickly want to show you what's in that folder. You don't have to upload it right now, but you may want to at least eventually. And if you want to do it now, as always, that's your call anyway. But just to show you what's in there, and I'm going to add to it. There's a simple HelloWorld program in there. And you might say, does it work? And I can look at you and smile and say, I have no flaming idea because I can't get the emulator to work. But hey, we'll be working on that too. So the other stuff that's in there, there's a folder that says Android Day 1. And what's in there? This right here, I'm not going to double click on any of it, but this is 3 meg. This is Tutorials Point, their Android tutorial. All right, it's about a year and a half old. It's 216 pages. All right. This is a part of that in there on creating your first app, and I've got a copy of that for you, so we're going to look at that in just a bit. There's a company that's called Kinvi, and again, this is a little old. You can see it's probably about a year old now. It's called How to Make an Android App, but it's just very high level. All right. The other thing that's in there, I'm going to have to add to this, but this has got some URLs that you might find help you as you start working your way through here. You'll notice that the magic site to go for Android is developer.android.com. There is an android.com, but it's for non-programmers. All right? Like there's a bunch of people eating lollipops on it because the next version of Android is going to be called Lollipop. So I'm not going to even talk anymore about that one. But you'll notice the reference that's right here and the API guides that are right here, that's very similar to what I showed you when we went out to java.sun.com and I went out to the API for Java. Similar types of stuff. All right. There is an Android open source project. I haven't looked at it real much, but I thought I'd include it just so you could see it. You know that I've got my YouTube channel, but there also is a YouTube Android channel. So if you go out there, you can go out there, and if you want to, you can subscribe to that channel. All right. A couple of articles on learning XML. Do you have to know XML to understand Android programming? It helps. You're going to start to see that already today. All right. The stuff that you learn from Java, it doesn't go away. Still is important. Okay. All right. Some of the other stuff that's in here: a beginner's guide to Android, Android Video, Androidology, etc. Parts 1, 2, and 3. They're a little bit dated, so they're a little older. It's not that they're bad, all right, but I was looking at them before, and if you notice, let's see, that's the YouTube channel right there, and they have a thing now where you can make your own Android character. It's kind of like an avatar for you if you want to do that, so I don't. All right. This is a beginner's guide to Android, but as you can see, it's over 4 years old. So the stuff that's in there will still be relevant as far as the concepts are not going to have changed. But screenshots, etc., some of the stuff that he shows you in there will certainly look different today. This is that 216-page tutorial from Tutorials Point. They always put young, nice-looking people on the cover. All right, and when you look in here, I'm not going to go through any of it. I just, other than to show you again, it's, well, I was looking for the date on it and I don't see it, but so you can see how to set up your environment, broadcast receivers, content providers. There's a lot of stuff on that. The GUI controls. We're going to go into all this stuff. What we don't get into this semester, we will get into next semester. All right? And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, okay, what would be a good way? Because, it, you know, although I could just sit there and give you the code and tell you, you just type it in. You type it in, you get an A. And you might think, that's a good plan. All right? But I don't particularly think so. So what I've done is I've rewritten the calculator app in Android. So it's very similar, but it's yet a little bit different. It's like the one that we did last year. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is modify it. So instead of looking like it does when we create it, you make it look like the one that we're doing for iOS does. See what I'm saying? And then, just to be fair, I'm going to ask you to do the reverse. I'm going to ask you to take the iOS one and make it look like this Android one that we're going to create. Because that'll give you some practice doing this stuff. You'll have probably 75 to 90% of the program already written for you. So you'll have to make some cosmetic and a few code changes to get it to work. All right? Okay, that's in there. So again, I'm not going to open that. This is the one that we're going to go over in just a couple minutes, this HelloWorld example. Weird stuff has happened, okay, today. And I'm saying it so it's being taped. Thank you, Mr. Wanda, for all of the assistance that you've given me. All right, including me walking over and complaining to the guy from IT, this stuff doesn't work. And I got back and John said, yeah, it does. All right, and he had to show me how it works. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I've had to go, and some of you maybe heard me say this before, that the app, when you bring it up, this is the app. Don't worry, because there's no code in it. The code that's there is written for you automatically. But the point is, I guess I turned off the emulator. But to me, the emulator is a piece of software. When I tried running this, it told me my emulator had no battery. And it didn't make any sense to me. Till I went out and checked it online and found out that, lo and behold, you can change the AVD battery configuration. So I went out there and did that. The reason I'm telling you that is if we get to the point today where you're all able to get the HelloWorld program at least written, that's cool. All right? So we'll come to that later. Okay? This right here, and I'm going to add this to my list of things that's on those URLs, so I might update that for later. But, so let's see, put it about right here. Android stack architecture. All I did was I copied a picture out of a book that I'm not using. So if you want to go out to this site and you do want to find more internally about what Android architecture is like, you can go out here. Do you have to do that? Not no. Hell no. But sometimes people like to look at the stuff that's here and say, I'd like to compare that to what we're doing in other languages. So this is an example of where you can do that. It's also, and everybody should have a copy of the handout that I gave. All right, it's very similar to the page that says Android Stack. All right, it's not identical, but it's very similar as far as the stuff that's in there. And what's on the back of that one, and there is a back, that kind of shows you what happens when you run a program. Again, I took both those out of a different book, which isn't exactly kosher to do, but technically you're supposedly all right as long as you keep it down to 1% or below that you copy from a book. That book is about, I think about 800 pages. Nope, 700 pages. Since I copied 2, that doesn't even meet the sniff test. All right? Okay, so just a couple things then as we get started here. As I mentioned to you, android.developer.com, that gets you to the actual Android site. There's all sorts of stuff off of here. It doesn't look like it, but there are. As it says, there's sample code, there are videos. All right, I don't know what that is, but there's a bunch of stuff. There are tutorials that are off of here and a lot of other stuff. All right, I do not claim to be an expert in this. In fact, I would make the reverse. I will claim to not be an expert in this. So occasionally I will say stuff and you might try it and we might find out that the way I put it to you wasn't the best way, or maybe I put it to you in a way that was confusing. I don't try to do that. I just naturally do it at times. All right. This is the package index. So again, this is similar to what you'd find if you'd go out to java.sun.com. You'd choose the API that's there and you'd bring that up. Very similar to what I showed you in Java. I'm not going to do it again here. But that's sometimes it's nice to have that open because it explains to you how to do different things. All right. This, again, is right from the developer.android.com site. Go out to guideindex.com. It's an introduction to Android. I wouldn't call it a tutorial. The good news is all of you have both the wherewithal and the ability that you could read the stuff that's in here, and I think it would make sense to you. The bad news is if Joe or Jane Schmo off the street comes through there with no experience whatsoever, they're going to find that a lot harder to understand. All right? So as we go in here, this is the first thing that I want to show you. First of all, if you're not into the virtual desktop, please get into the virtual desktop right now. Do not start Eclipse. If you've started Eclipse, close Eclipse. All right, so as you can see, my desktop is a little bit cluttered. It'll be uncluttered after I'm dead. All right? Actually, it'll be uncluttered by the end of this year because he'll rebuild the virtual desktop, and that's when it'll be uncluttered. All right? Again, kudos, thanks to John and to Terry Prindle, who's always been there when I've needed help with any of this kind of stuff. All right? The first thing I would like you to do, now if you already, I'm going to ask you to create a folder in here. If you already have a folder by the name I'm telling you to create it, then create a different one. All right? I created a folder called Android 2014. Okay? And if you like that, if you want to just call it Android, whatever, but please create a folder on your desktop. That is where we are going to save all of our Android stuff. Don't say, well, I'll just use my Java folder. No, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But no, don't do that. We're going to be running two different versions of Eclipse. The version of Eclipse we used for Java does not work for Android. Did everybody hear that? Anybody who didn't hear that? Right now, you're used to going over here to Eclipse, and you may even have a shortcut for this. You double click on Eclipse Java. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to why am I saying double click? We're going to double click on Eclipse Mobile. Just tell it to cancel or whatever. She should be all right. Yeah, do remind me later. And if it comes back and it says when, type in there when hell freezes over. Okay? All right. So everybody was able to go and create like an Android or an Android 2014 on your desktop, correct? All right. Then what I want you to do is I want you to start up Eclipse Mobile. And I'm going to close mine, all right? So let me do a close all because I want to be right where you are. All right. So that should be at least right where you are is right here. Again, in the past we've always double clicked on Eclipse Java. Now we will double click on Eclipse Mobile, however you want to pronounce it. All right, so please double click on Eclipse Mobile, and that will start it up. Now, you might have all sorts of stuff that happens the first time you do it because you're starting it for the first time. So stuff may happen on yours that didn't happen on mine. It's okay. All right, then maybe you did open it already. But, okay. If I had you do it in the past, it's because I didn't know we were supposed to do the Eclipse for Java earlier in the semester. All right? Now, this next thing that happens, first of all, it may still be loading, so don't worry if it is. You can still listen. All right? What probably is going to happen, you have to realize that this virtual desktop was created for you last July. August, September, October. So it's been 3.5, closer to 4 months, and there have been a lot of upgrades that have happened since then. Everybody understand what I'm saying? All right. So what I would like you to do next is I would like you, do you all have a screen that looks like this? I mean, it might still be loading, but if it's not still loading, I just said finished, yeah, because it asked me that when I started too. So are we all here? All right. Now, so the first thing I would like you to do is I'd like you to go and do File and do a Switch Workspace. And just go down to Other. And what you will put in there is this, except yours won't be J. Scott. Yours will be whatever your username is, and this will be whatever you called your folder that you just created. Does that make sense? So John's might be d:\users /jwanda/desktop /Android or Android 2014 or whatever. So again, don't use J. Scott because I double checked. None of you have that for a username. And whatever you put here, make it be the same folder that you just created. So if Mike called his Mike, then that's what he should put there. Once you put that in and you click OK, I'm not going to, because there's no reason for me to reset mine. It was already set correctly. Once you've done that, click OK. And it might come back and tell you that it's going to restart Eclipse for you. And don't worry about it if it does. It's fine. So it may quit Eclipse and restart it for you. All right? When it restarts it, it should now have that folder as your folder for your workspace. Does everybody understand? If you look up on the screen here, everybody, even if you think, yeah, I get it, okay. So what happens is, there's mine right there, Android 2014. So every time I create a project, it puts it in there. That's what a workspace is. It's kind of like root. It's kind of like a folder that holds all your other folders. All right? But what we said, since we're technically, and don't worry, if I see Mike's got a message up there, leave that message up there if you would. If you get an error message now that comes up, good. I'll show you how to fix it in just a second. Some of you may get it, some of you may not. But Mike's got his welcome screen, and behind it, and right in the middle, he's got a small little thing with an error message in it. What does that say, Mike? Yeah, something about the Android SDK. It doesn't know where to find it. We're going to tell it in just a second. All right? I went through this. And as I told John, I would much rather have it that I got every frigging error that you could get, and you got none of them, than the reverse. All right? Because the chances are good if I get the error at least sometime, you're going to get that error. And that's good. All right? So, Mike, if you can tell me, what does it say for your two options? It says open preferences or close. Click the preferences button, if you would, please. All right? And it comes up with a dialog box, correct? In that dialog box, way up on the top, near the top center of it, there's a white area that you can type in, correct? Everybody see that, who had that come up. What I'd like you to type in then, did you type? Try doing it, that's a good one. No, there is a way to do it, and I found out because I screwed. Go to Windows Preferences, I think it is. Is that what it was? Okay. What's that? No, that's what I'm going to tell you in a minute. All right. What you see up on the screen is what you can type. And type it in exactly like that, please. You're letting it know where your Tools folder is. That's where it is. That should work. After you put all of that stuff in there, all right, then hopefully you'll have your apply button will show, does it? It's not grayed out anymore, so click the apply button. If you say, well, I put it in and my apply button still doesn't show, then raise your hand. If your apply button is not grayed out anymore, click it. Again, we only have to do this once. All the stuff I'm telling you, we only have to do it once. But I'd rather have us spend the first day doing the logistic type of things and getting that done as opposed to getting some of it done, doing some code, then doing some more of it. I don't want to do that. Why not just get it all done from the beginning? All right. Did that work now for everybody? Hopefully that now the box is filled in underneath it. All right, then is there an OK button? Then just click OK. All right, so click Apply, then click OK. All right. What that has done is that has let the Android part of the compiler know where the particular tools that you'll need to use are located. Okay? And previously it didn't know. And the funny thing is, like I said, stuff has changed since we did it last year. Last year this was seamless. We had no one who had what you guys just had, including me. No one. It worked fine. There was not any problem. But then we still were using Vista back then. All right, now we're using Windows 7. Okay, and I mean, could there be weird things with this in Windows 7? There could be weird things with Windows 7 in anything. All right. Now, what you're going to notice when we start working on this stuff. Okay, I want to show you this. What I'm about to show you, you don't have to do this. All right, but I'm going to bring up the HelloWorld program just so you can see it. You don't have it yet. All right, but I'm going to bring it up. What you're going to notice if you look over here is there's a lot of stuff we didn't see before. All right, and you get GUI, for lack of better words, you get GUI built in. All right, and if I come over here by Res and I go to Layout and I click over here, and don't worry because you're going to all see this hopefully before the period's over, and I go to Graphical Layout, this is what you get by default from the system. And no, it's not that ugly. It's just for some reason it's taken a while to refresh itself. There you go. You get yet another toolbox to work with that's set up yet differently than the stuff we've been dealing with. So, for instance, if I came through here and I wanted to take a button, I could literally click, hold down on it, and drag it over here. That's all you got to do. It's not, again, not to be funny. I don't think this is funny. It's not rocket science. Okay? What we're going to do in just a minute is we're going to come in and we're going to set up our first project. But before we do that, John mentioned a couple things when we were talking earlier, and that is, just so you know, this whole thing, the way that it's referred to, your screen right here, the way that this stuff is referred to in Eclipse is they're different views and different perspectives. All right? And if you go under Window, and you can all do this right now, if you click Window, all right, and it doesn't matter if you had those errors, didn't have those errors, or whatever. But if you go down to, what was it, John? Customize perspective? If you go to Customize perspective, and you click on that, that should bring up this. All right, so I went to Window, Customize perspective. All right, and we want to go to, I think it's Menu Visibility, the second one, the second tab that's there. So if you click Menu Visibility, all right, now what was it under? Window? Under New. Under File, New? Okay. So are we all right here? All right. So the plus sign that's by File, go ahead and click that File, or that plus sign that's right here by File. Click the plus sign that's right there. All right. Now I don't remember what we did. the new plus sign. So we've done File, then New. All right? And you'll notice there's a boatload of stuff here, and I don't know what most of it is. But if we arrow down toward the bottom, I see. There you go. You'll notice there's a bunch of stuff here for Android. Now, do you have to set any of it? You can. I would not suggest setting Android sample project. I don't know what that's going to do for you. All right, but you can take your mouse and you can put it over the boxes and it'll show you what's in there. So if you want to go and set any of these options, you can just literally click the box and they'll be set for you. And if you look at it later and you go, there's stuff in here I really don't think I need, then go back to this and just uncheck it. That's all you got to do. Was there anything else we had to change in here? So go down to the very bottom where we are right now and find Window at the very, it's the second from the bottom. All right, down near the very bottom. All right, again, what did we do? We went to File, then we went to New. All right, and New gave us all this stuff. If we keep arrowing down inside of there, near the very bottom should be Window. And if you click on that plus sign, all right, and then we go to Show View. I don't know about you, but I'm glad we only have to do this once. All right, I'm going to go to Show View. All right. Right there, and make sure that's checked. Yours may be checked already. And just so you know, let's say that Teresa's working on this. She's trying to keep up, but boy, you're going way too fast, Jeff. And none of it's working for me. All this is doing is it's making sure that certain windows are going to show on your screen. All right, so when I start to do things, if you say, I don't have that window, it's probably because when we did this, yours didn't show. So you're just going to have to go back in and do it. Yeah, there's a boatload of stuff because this is set up, Eclipse is set up to be an editor that'll handle about anything. Yeah, make sure the properties one is checked. And maybe yours may be checked already. And did he go down to Window at the bottom? And unfortunately, when you look at this, it's not in alphabetic order. That'd make it a lot easier, wouldn't it? I think that's the only thing we had to do, right? So if you've done all that, click OK. And I'm going to take for granted you didn't even like doing that. Okay? That said, what we're about to do, you're going to like that less. And the reason, but what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to tell the system to run any updates that have not been run for us since this virtual desktop was set up. Does that make sense to people? Because again, the virtual desktop is about 3 to 4 months old and there have been several updates to the Android operating system since then. So we're going to tell it to run those updates for us. I'm going to wait until Kelly's all caught up. Is everybody else caught up to where we were? Oh, there was another thing that had to be set in there?
No, once you close that.
All right. All right, you're right. Go to Window, then go to Show View. And then if you click Properties, it should now show on the bottom of your screen down here. See where I've got the mouse going back and forth? That wasn't there before, so that's what we added. Now, if you say, mine's not showing, it's probably because you have your help screen up still. And if the help screen is up, or the welcome screen, just close that welcome screen. What was the question? That was it? Okay. And if it doesn't show yet, don't worry about it. We're going to start a project and then it'll show. So it's got to be save perspective as then.
Yeah, well, come back and say it's already done. Just click OK.
All right. Because, so John said, go back one more time and click Window, Save Perspective As. It already has a name of Java in it, which is fine, and just click OK. Because what you've done then is you've changed the default settings. So if it says it already exists, you want to overwrite it. Yes, because it's just got our changes in it, and that's it. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you, takes pretty close to an hour to complete. Sorry. But this is running all those updates. And the only reason I know it takes about that long is I ran them. All right? So, go to Window and go down third from the bottom where it says Android SDK Manager. Maybe that's the fourth from the bottom. Not the Virtual Device Manager. We're going to hit on that one later. But go to Android SDK Manager. All right, highlight that and click. It's going to start the SDK Manager. SDK, just so you know, Software Developer Kit. Java runs with the JDK. Android runs with the SDK. All right, and technically so does Java. But if you look on there, please look up on the screen right now. My guess is that almost everything that you see that I have here that says installed, yours says not installed. Not all of them, but you probably have several that say not installed. All right. What I did was I said I want the Android stuff basically to be about as up to date as it can possibly be. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is go all the way up to where it says extras. All right. So if you arrow down in here about half, if you arrow down to the bottom, you see extras in a folder that says extras. Everything you've got up above extras that says not installed, we want to install that. All right. One thing that you can do is you can basically tell it to install everything. The problem is that's probably really going to take a long time. All right. So all this stuff that you have that's uninstalled, just check the box. That's all you have to do. And once you start to check the box, once you've got them all checked, then you'll tell it to install. And it'll probably say, it'll ask you for permission or whatever, and say yes. Then those of you who smoke can have a really long cigarette today. Because like I said, it'll take somewhere around an hour. Some of them will already be checked. I want you to check everything that's got not installed by it. Make sure it's checked. As soon as you check the first one, you should have a button, the button that's on the right-hand side that's mine is gray here, where it says Install Packages. All right? That should light up. You shouldn't ever have to delete anything. Down to where it says, down to the very bottom, if you go all the way down to the very bottom, you'll see a folder that says the word extras. Yeah, everything. No, I don't want you to open them, but anything that says not installed. No, that's a good question. No, you don't have to add that stuff, but anything that's down to that point that says not installed, check the box. Yeah, so just leave them alone. They're fine. They should be fine. I don't know why any of that stuff would actually matter, to be honest with you. And if it does, we're going to find out later, and then we know how to go back and change it anyway. What's that? We don't want. No. All right. And Laura just brought up a point here. If you look up on the screen, because I didn't do this. Notice on mine, she said, well, what about all these that still have the plus sign there? And maybe that stuff should be installed. I think they are all older versions, because up here, we've already got up through 5. So that should overwrite the old stuff anyway, so we really shouldn't have to do that. I just would rather right now have you add in a few too many things, and we probably have some older versions. The way this is supposed to work is it overwrites the old version with the new version. All right? And we should have no problem whatsoever with space and stuff with this stuff. So after you've got everything selected, click the button that says Install Packages. All right, again, it may ask you to agree to it or something like that. If it does, there might be a checkbox or whatever that it asks you to agree to the terms. Just check it and say, then tell it to start. Tell it to do the install. Yeah, anything that's that old, I
I would comfortable with that. Yeah, 14 maybe, or maybe the oldest.
again, we're going to talk about this after the break. But if you look at the stuff that's in here, these are all old APIs. These are for older versions of Android. All right. The most important one, the one we're going to be using, or the most important two or three, are the ones that are around 21 there. All right. But the problem is, and you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this after the break. The problem is, let's assume when you start to build this, we're going to start building a project after the break, and after this all loads. And if it doesn't all load by the time class ends, we'll do it on Thursday. But the point is, we will build the project, and you can tell it what version to go down to. Okay, does everybody understand what I just said? So you can choose, you can tell it to go down to version 1. The good news is even people with really old operating systems can run it. That's the good news. The bad news is any new hardware additions that have been put in there since version 1 probably won't work if you're using version 1. So there's both a plus and a minus to going down. So most people, when they go up to about version 2.6 or even above that. All right? Android, I mentioned this the other day, I'm saying it again. One of the difference between Android developers and iOS developers. iOS comes out with iOS 8. Within 2 weeks, 90% of the people have it downloaded. Android comes up with a new version. After 2 months, 90% of people don't have it downloaded. See the difference? You can be like that when you become kind of the Microsoft of mobile products, because Android now has a 75% market. So you can do whatever the hell you want when you've got that kind of a market share. Okay? So if you've done, has everybody done that and clicked the button to install? All right. Then it should be working on that. What you might want to do is just minimize that window. Don't close it. Click the minus sign to minimize. What does the error message say? Yeah, it'd be the screen down at the bottom. It's trying to run that. And it might be that some of the old stuff is literally just too old. All right? If it keeps going, though, you should be all right. I didn't notice any errors, but the thing is, what I did with mine is I immediately, because I was working on PHP at the same time, so I immediately minimized it. And then when it was done, I immediately closed it. I didn't even look at my log file. So mine might have done that too. I really and truly don't know. Yeah, it will take close to an hour. All right? Now, what I want to do between now, just take about 10 minutes or so. We'll take a break. We'll take a healthy break today. We all need one. You say, no, I don't. Well, I do. All right. So we'll take a healthy break, but I'm going to give you another handout right now. The handout that I'm going to give you is this one right here. 2 pages long. I get it back to back, and there should be enough here that everybody can get a copy. The cool thing, just so you know, next semester, for the actual Android class, all right, there's a book. We're going to go through the book. Are we going to go through all of it? No. How much are we going to go through? Some of it. And then we're going to get to a point where I'm going to ask people, do you kind of have a comfort level? And then I want you to at least lie to me and say yes. But hopefully you will. And then what we're going to do is it's going to be at least somewhat like the Joomla class. Your assignment is to build yourself an app. It doesn't have to be an app that you're necessarily going to sell, but that's going to be your homework, is to build an app. All right? And what you're going to have to do as the semester goes on is show me your progress. All right? And if you want to build one app in iOS and another one in Android, that's fine. If you want to build the same app in both, that's fine. But my hope is that one of the things that you will be showing when you're in the design and implementation projects class in spring, and we bring in people from the outside, are those apps. I'm going to try to even see if I can get some people in from Madison who actually hire iOS and Android developers. So you can show them what you've been doing. All right, so I'm going to walk through at least some of this. Somebody tell me, Zane, tell me when it's 10 minutes from now. We'll make sure we take a break at 5:02. All right, so again, it says here, the first step to create a simple Android application. I just want to show you what you do to do this, all right? Again, yours is still downloading, so what I'm about to show you, you can't do yet. But when we get back, and we'll do it again as a class, but I want to show it to you. So I'm just going to close everything. And I'm going to pretend that I'm starting a brand new project. All right, so I'm going to say File, New, Android Application Project. This thing right there, it may not sound like much where it says Android Application Project. You don't see that in the Eclipse Java, because that's what I was trying to get it from this morning. John went running after me, but I was already gone. And he said, that's because you don't use Eclipse Java, you use Eclipse Mobile. Okay. But when you do this and you do a File, New, Android Application Project, this is what the screen will look like. So I've already got a HelloWorld, but let's just say I told you to call it HelloWorld 2. Don't put any blank spaces in there at all. All right. And the application and the project name are the same. The package name, I would appreciate it if you do it the same way that we were talking about it. Something like that. Does that make sense to everybody? Does all three of these things make sense? Now when you look here, minimum required SDK. So when you look here, notice you can go all the way up to 1.0. And that means that people who are still, that probably 0.006% of the population that's still using that, would be able to run your app. But the problem is there have been so many changes to Android and what it is capable of doing that stuff wouldn't be supported by the older versions. So usually most people set it up to like Froyo. And does anybody know the story behind this too? It's all in alphabetic order. So when you look at this, C, D, E, etc., F, G, H, I. All right, and that's why L, that you don't see, it's L preview. That's Lollipop. All right, they've always tried to make it, and I don't know why. They literally entered into an agreement, if you've never heard of this, with the Kit Kat company. And if you may or may not have noticed this, but when it first came out, Kit Kats had a bunch of their Kit Kats that had the little Android logo on them. And there were a certain number of them that had special prizes and stuff like that inside. All right, they're doing anything they can to get their name out there and to get their name known. All right, if you said, well, if Mike says to me, well, I'm doing this project and it's pretty advanced, and really it's only stuff in 4.0 and above, then that's what you would choose. That would mean that probably your app would not work with anything that's above that blue line. Does that make sense? But if Mark comes in and says, oh no, I need like donut, then notice the only thing that won't work right there are just those three. But probably it'll work fine as long as the functionality he puts in it is really, really simplistic. But if he puts, that's frozen yogurt. All right. So usually, I mean, a good one to kind of put it at is like Froyo, and sometimes people even say to put it up like to Honeycomb. All right. And that's the minimum required. Then notice the target required. Notice there, you can do the same kind of thing. I just chose the biggest one. Again, that's Lollipop Preview. All right. Maybe that's why I was having problems with getting the emulator to work. I'm not sure. Okay. That says that's probably the machine you're going to run it on most often. That's the target machine. Then it says compile with. So what kind of compiler do you want to use? And notice the only ones that I have in there are API 20 and API 21. So I kept basically almost all of the defaults in here. Then notice here, not real much stuff. All right, those are going to be the default coloring schemes that you have set up in here. You can have none whatsoever, holo dark, holo light, and holo light with dark action bar. There are other ones that you can get, but you have to either download them or buy them. So we're not going to do anything with those. We're just going to use these. All right, so let's say everything was cool the way it was. Okay, I don't even care because I'm not going to save this anyway. So I go to next. Now what it says in here is configure project. The good news is you don't have to change anything in here. You don't have to change anything. All right, so you just click next. then it says, well, you see some stuff in here. And again, I'm just explaining this to you. We're going to only go over it and go over it once because I'm never going to talk about this stuff again. But when you see the stuff that's here, hopefully you notice that the pictures get bigger every time. All right. The DPI is like a density per inch type of thing. The medium is the smallest, then it's high density, then it's extra high density, then it's extra high density. And the idea is, as time has gone on, when you've got devices that have better and better cameras, all right, you can try to come up with better and better icons, etc. for them. If you are creating your own app, so let's say John's creating his own app, and it's, what was that thing you're doing, the beer and wine and cheese or whatever it is. So what he decides he wants to have happen is he literally employs a graphic artist because he wants his logo to be really cool. All right. The chances are very good that once he does that, he's going to have 4 logo files in there, one in each one of these directories. And they are supposed to be a certain size, width by height. We'll talk about that as we get into it. All right. For what we'll be doing most of this semester, we don't care because we're just going to accept the default icon anyway. All right. So again, you don't have to change anything in here. So you click Next again. All right. Now, if you look here, because this has changed, John, this has even changed since you guys did it last year, because last year there were only 3 possibilities here. Now there's, what, 7? And we're going to choose blank activity for everything that we're doing. I'm not going to explain what fragments are because it would be too confusing. All right? Empty is just that. You start with nothing. Full screen. Okay? Master detail, where you can literally set it up that for lack of better words, that's your master part over here, and you click things over here, and the stuff that's over here changes. That makes sense? All right. Navigation drawer utility, kind of the same thing. All right, but again, it's as it says, it's meant to be more navigated oriented. And tabs, if you're going to be using tab controls. For right now, what we're going to be using is blank activity. All right. And if I click Next again, it comes up and it says, what do you want to call that blank activity? And notice what it defaults to. For the first project or 2 that we do, we're just going to keep it at main activity. All right? And the layout name, we'll keep that at activity main. And if I click Finish now, again, I'm not going to keep the project, but I just want you to see what it creates for me. All right? All right, there's my hello to. Now you see it. I think you'd all at least agree I put no code in here. But you notice there's a bunch of stuff set up for me and a boatload more folders than the folders that we had, when we were doing our stuff previously. All right? And right now, if I were to run this, all it would say would be Hello World. That you see, hopefully you can see that right there. All right? So what we're going to do, it's 1:53, we're going to take a break, we're going to come back at 2:10, and when we come back, we're going to walk through the rest of this. And if yours is still loading, it's fine. All right, that's not a problem. If yours is still loading, and like for example with Mike, if yours is still loading and it's 3 o'clock and it's still loading for some reason, we'll shut yours down when it gets done. Okay. All right. So again, let's take a break and we'll come back at, what do we say, 2:10? 2:10. All right. The good news is 90% of the stuff we're doing now, we only have to do it once. We will not have to do this stuff again.